Good morning. It's Yom Tov Chai El, the letters of Baal Shem Tov and of the Alter Rebbe. Okay, so we are up to today, Daf of days. We're continuing discussing an Eved Ivri. Now remember, there are two kinds. There's an Eved Ivri that sold himself because of his economic situation, and it's called a Moicher Atzmai. And then there's an Eved Ivri that is sold by a bezin because he was caught stealing, and he cannot afford to repay the victim. So it's called a machru bezin. Now, if you remember, we had a big machlekes on moicher atzmai. Is there a din of nirtzef? Can he say, I want to stay beyond the 6 years? If we have the gezerah shava sacher, which means we equate all the avodim to each other, yes. And then if we don't, then no, you cannot. Then the Gemara said, even if you do have the Gzer Shabbos Sacher, there might be certain psukim that seem to limit the idea, the capacity of this Eved saying, I want to stay beyond the 6 years. And why I'm introducing that is, as we'll see in the Gemara here, it's actually difficult to understand some of the Gemara here, what's going on. So let's continue. But it'll actually, Rashi and Chumash is so meduyuk, we can see why Rashi says what he says. Let's continue the Gemara as I'll raise it as we get there. Chav Beis Amid Aleph. We're continuing the dinim here, about 6 lines from the top of the page. Rashi tells us that different girsos in this Gemara, and he completely dismisses the other girsos. So we will learn the girsos that Rashi says is the right one. Tell them what we learned. It says in Pasuk V'im Amor Yoimar HaEved. It says twice. If the Eved will say, and he will say. So we learn from here that he actually has to say twice during his servitude, years of servitude, that he wants to remain on beyond the 6 years. He has to say it once and repeat it again. Now, Amar, this is what the Brisa says, and then later on we'll explain. Amar, B'tchila Sheish, the beginning of 6 years. So right now we understand it means the first day of his servitude. The Amar B'Saif Sheish didn't say that the very end of his 6 years servitude. If he said right in the beginning, oh, I want to stay here longer, nothing happens. It says, what's part of his statement? The statement is, I love where I am, and I don't want to go free, which means he's on the threshold of about to be set free. So obviously, at the end of the 6 years, if he doesn't say then, nothing happens. No, so that should be enough, sufficient. In fact, the normal reading of the pasuk is the end of the 6 years. He says, I want to remain on. He stays on. It also doesn't work. Why? It says, Im Omar Yomer Eved. If the Eved will say, he says, and right now we understood it means as soon as he became an Eved. The first day that he's an Eved, he already has to say, oh, I want to stay on. I have this issue, which is difficult to understand. Amar said, we don't understand. How in the world can he say a hafti is ishti? He's explaining that the first day of his servitude. He has no idea, and he doesn't have an ishti. Ishti is referring to a shivcha kanan. It's a maid that the master gives him. It doesn't happen yet. So what does it even mean? If he said in the beginning that and he's now first of all, okay, that's correct. But the pasuk he brought is not necessary. My area, why do you have to be be medactic meloy eitz chavshi? Typically, the beginning you need a haftis adonis ishtivas bonai velek. If it's early in the piece, he doesn't have it yet. So obviously, it has to be the end of the piece. Furthermore, what did the Brisa say? If you didn't say in the beginning, it's no good. Because we are passing all that. Because it says in the passing Eved. And the end of the 6 years, he's not an Eved. He's not an Eved. Still an Eved. What's going on here? Why? How do it have to be in the beginning? So Rava comes along and says beginning and end does not mean the beginning of the 6 years or the end of the 6 years. What does it mean? It means when there's still the master paid a certain amount of money for the Eved, and every day he works off that money. So as long as there's still a shava pruta left of labor that the Eved owes the master, so then that's called the beginning of the 6. And the other the 6 is when there's less than shava pruta left. So Amar Rabba betchilut pruta acharayna, the beginning of the last coin, and the end means beside pruta acharayna, the end of the last coin. And he explained as follows. So now everything makes sense. At the very end, you need the pasuk because that mamish is the last minute, which is less than the pruta, and you need the pasuk of Amar Yomer HaEved. There still has to be a pruta value of avda still left here.
Basically, at the end, he just has to say it twice.
Yeah, how long a shav pruta could be? A few days worth. Yeah, towards that. There's a machlekes shaynim. One of the shaynim say that you have to say it 4 times. Omar yomer each time, because there's 2 psukim. One pasuk is le'etzeh chavshi, and one pasuk is lahafti zishti. So he says you got to say 4 times, 2 times each time. Talmud we learned. What happens lo isha ubanim? Let's say he got a shifra knanis and so on and so forth, but Rabbi isha ubanim, but his master doesn't. It was single. Ein nitzah. Shneimar says he has to say it to his master. I love you as beisach and your family. Who's the family? The machlek is a shayni of the master also have to have children, because sometimes we say beisach zu ishta, he's only his wife, or beisach means a family. Le rabbi, what happened? The master has isha bani v'lo and isha bani. He never got married. He never shivcha. Ein nitzah. Shneimar haftis ishti as adoini was ishti as bana. He has to say I might. As a machlek by him as well. She'll say she died and he only has children. Can he stay on or not? Doesn't mean and, or it means or. Who oyev is a rabbi, but rabbi ain't no oyev. If he loves his master, he wants to stay on, but master doesn't want him. Ain't a nitzah. I mean, you think it's obvious. The master is mechuyev to keep him on. It says kitov le'imach. Have to be equal to both. Rabbi, this is even harder to say. Rabbi oyev, the master loves him. Who ain't oyev rabbi? Doesn't love his master. So what's going on here? So obviously, the reason why he's staying is not because he likes his master. He's getting provided for. He has a roof over his head. Doesn't worry about a thing. That's not a good enough reason. The reason has to be that you're compatible. You can live with each other and so on. And it says, it says, he has to love him. Who let's say he's infirm and his master isn't. You have to be good with each other. It has to be good condition. Rabbi if his master is sick and he isn't, have to be same condition. So by the way, they're both sick. So they're equal, but not good. My imach bina vayika is a stress imach or the stress is toiv. I do maki toiv imach bina. V'halaka you don't have that. Hey, cool. Tell me learned. Ki toiv imach, which we had a few days ago. What in the pasuk he says, I love being with you here, and it's equal. Imach b'meichel, imach b'mishta, you got to treat him equal with food and drink. You eat fine flour, but he eats coarse flour. You eat aged wine, he drinks only new wine. You sleep on very soft material, like cotton, whatever, or wool. He has to sleep on straw. I told you last time, it's such extremes. It doesn't say that that you have old age wine and he doesn't, or you have a fine material, his material is not as fine as yours. So some of the Shayim say it doesn't mean you have to give him the same. It means you can't maltreat him, treat him like an Evid. You have to give him a little bit of cheretz. Even if you buy an Evid, even like you bought yourself an Odai. And we had already tasted before. To remind you again, Taisa says before, he didn't acquire a master, he acquired an equal. Because you have to be the same. So it says, no, sometimes he's your master. Because if you only have one of something, you can't use it because not using it at all is mamash midas daim, just sitting there in the closet. So you'll give it to your slave. Comes out that he has more than you. How we learned? It says in the pasuk, when he finishes his term, he leaves you, he and his children. When his children slaves, he was a slave. Now we're talking about his own biological children, not the Shivcha Kananis children. So what do you mean they go out? The Shivcha Kananis children don't leave; they stay they remain with the master. The master has to feed his kids while he's a slave. The big machlek is Rishonim. So the earnings of the wife and the children. The wife was that. If he's married before he became a slave, his wife is set free with him. When was she a slave? So big machlek is Rishonim. So while the master is providing for the wife, her earnings go to the master. If you remember, the reason why her mezainis goes to her husband is because he's providing for her. So therefore, the Chacham said in lieu, all the earnings go to him. Does the same thing apply to a master or not? And is this a chiv mahatoid or a chiv medrabban? Also, machlek Rishonim. So why do you have to have a certain pasuk for children, a certain pasuk for a wife? From here, the is a raya that the husband had to provide for his wife matoidos. Machlek is if a husband has to provide for his wife matoidos midrabban. Sheikus does it mean that matoidos is clear to actually provide, she'eh, which is food, or not midrabban? Big machlek Rishonim. From here, we're saying that the Torah is telling you that the master has to feed your wife. Sounds like because you can't. In other words, you are mechuyev mahatayda to feed your wife. And then when it says children, what age children are we talking about? We had in our exhibits with different ages. To the age of 6, you have to. From 6 to 12, we scream at you. You should take care of your kid. 12 and onwards, it's tzedakah. Which age group does the master have to supply? Only till 6 when you're mechuyev, or even 6 and 12 when we frown upon the father for not giving food to the thing, or even above 12 when it's tzedakah. The master has to step into the shoes of the slave. Big mistake in the pasuk. With tzricha. So why do you have to have a pasuk for the wife and for the children? And once you know that you have to support the wife the most, so you automatically know to support the children. No. The bone of the children, they don't work, they're young. The fact that it says loy b'nei mev mechlin, it sounds like definitely it's not above 12. We're talking about under 12, or maybe even under 6. But definitely the tzedakah part you cannot force. Aval ishta the bas mechel mevedi, emetavetek will go work. Yes, meaning ishta a woman like the dirchal aduri, she doesn't go none of the doors. Aval bon of the dirchal aduri, emeloy tzricha. Interesting. By woman we say that she has to work. And by children we say go door knocking because they're too young to work, so they can just go and try to collect food. Tell them what we learned. Ilu nemar oznoi badelis. The Torah says that you should bring him to the door or to the mezuzah, and the master's v'rotza adonif as oznoi b'martzeya. They should go ahead and pierce his ear, and then it says v'nosata ba'oznoi ubadelis. Place it in the ear and the door. So the Gemara says follows: Ilu nemar oznoi badelis, the ear by the door. I would say, you know what it means? Not that you pierce the ear itself. You go, you look at the height where the ear should have been, and you pierce the door, and it's symbolic, the whole thing anyway. And that's enough. The L is in Oznei, only the door, and not the ear. Well, how can you even think not pierce the ear? But it says, it's clear in the pasuk it says you pierce the ear. I would have said, pierce the ear outside, not near a door. Then put the ear by the door, and then go on the other side of the door and pierce a hole right through the door, equal to the height of the ear, where you pierce the ear. Therefore, the pasuk says you should take place the ear against the door, and you pierce them both. Okay. So you pierce right through the ear, and we had a machlekes whether it's the lobe or the cartilage to the door. It says delis, but delis can be called a door whether it's upstanding, whether it's lying on the ground. But you cannot call a doorpost when it's lying on the ground. It's only when it's standing. Is like a doorpost. Is only when it's standing. The door has to be standing as well. You put the ear against the door, and then you go through there, like earrings, like you're piercing it for earrings. Or this time you go straight. Yeah. Now here comes the Gemara, which is a little bit difficult to understand, and I haven't seen the first one. We talk about it, but I guess Rabbi Yechon Mezakai Dash in this passage, we find this expression many times. Rashi says chaymer means like a bag of beautiful perfume or diamond. In other words, in a beautiful way. Tracy says chaymer means in a ma'isa how it should be done. Why dafka pierce the ear? Why the ear? Hashem says, your ear heard my voice reverberating throughout the world and has seen I said, that you're my servants. You went ahead and you bought yourself another master. It's a little pierce ear. Very difficult to understand because obviously we're talking about a Moicher Atzmai. We know that a Moicher Atzmai before, according to one opinion, doesn't get sold. It cannot be a Matzeya. There's no Nirtzah by a Moicher Atzmai. What do you mean? He never sold him. So the Bezin, this is talking about a Machuru Bezin. Bezin sold him because he stole. Then the next one. Sorry?
Put himself in a situation.
That's too remote. Then we should. A second. Okay, so that's difficult to understand this Gemara. So obviously this Gemara is only going according to the opinion that says that a Moicher Atzmai also can become a martzeh because we have the Shav Sacher and doesn't believe in those other psukim that try to limit that. Okay. Okay, so further. But in my Yigmar at home is a Shimon Lakish. Who's a Shimon ben? What does it say there? I'm not sure what the age is. Reb Shimon ben Rebbe. Oh, Rebbe's son, Reb Shimon. Okay, maybe. Don't know. Are you doing this? Reb Shimon ben Rebbe. Zakai had a son, Reb Shimon. No, don't know. He dashed the poskim in Chaimer. He also say, "Man, you stand those who call kelim shabayis. How's the door and the mezuzah different in all the kelim in the house?" Amakash Baruch Hu. There, listen. Why? Okay, before we talk about the air, night talks about the door and mezuzah. So you aided in Mitzrayim. They were witnesses in Mitzrayim. I jumped over everybody's doorpost. I jumped over, the lintels. And I said, and I said that in Mitzrayim already as well. And you so on. I took you out physically from slavery to freedom. And the halachs have a cut on lots of name, and therefore you go ahead and become a slave. You should go ahead and you should be pierced right in front of the door in mezuzah. You're breaching, everything that we stood, in a way, everything that we stand for. Say problem here. This is a meicharatzmai. Before we go further, there's a famous question that Mefarshim ask. If the problem is that he sold himself as an eved, and you breach what Hashem said, then why wait for 6 years? And he says, "I want to remain on." As soon as he sold himself, they should give him pierces there, or give him some punishment. Why only after 6 years? So there's a number of answers. One is, when is it a problem if you want to stay la'olam till yovel? But if it's only a limited time, 6 years, then it's not such a problem. Not a great answer, because 6 years, in fact, it's a din. You're not allowed to write a contract more than 3 years. You're not allowed to write a contract more than 3 years because you're like an eved. You're not allowed to sell yourself as an eved. So even 6 years, and because 6 years is like double. So you're not allowed to. You should have got punished straight away. Others want to say that Torah made an allowance, because what kind of person is going to sell themselves? They're destitute, and they feel they have a mitzvah to provide for their family. So the Torah made an allowance. You can go. If after 6 years, you decide to go again, we don't think you're destitute anymore because you were taken care of and you got money. Means that you just wantonly, you want to take the easy road. It's an easy road in a way because you get taken care of, and your family is taken care of. You didn't use the money that you sold for to give it to your family because the master took care of your family all this time. Where's that money? So that means that you're no longer desperate, and then the Torah makes no allowance. That's the common answer given. Rashi in Chumash, the very first pshat, gives a different thing. You know why the ear is pierced? Should steal, and you went and stole. No, Rashi talking about a machur bezdin, which everybody agrees is a din of matzeh. That's why Rashi gives that pshat first, and Algemar doesn't bring that one down. I'm not sure why not. Before had both pshatim, but there's the same question. If the problem is he stole, then why wait 6 years? And he said, you should pierce his ear straight away. So I saw years ago, a beautiful answer, and I can't remember where I saw it. I didn't see it now, looking for nobody brings it there. He said like this. We have a rule in halacha called kamle b'derabuneh. You can never punish somebody, two punishments for one sin. He went ahead and stole, couldn't pay back. So he got a punishment. He received a punishment. He was sold as a slave. That's quite a punishment for 6 years. But if after 6 years he says, "I love it," that means he proved to us it wasn't a punishment at all. So then we got to give you the punishment you deserved in the first place. Anyway, it was a brilliant answer. I can't remember who said it. It definitely did not come from me. I didn't say that, but it's a beautiful answer. Okay, Mishnah. Eved Kanani. So till now we were speaking about an Eved Ivri. Now we have Eved Kanani. An Eved Kanani can be bought by a Yid from another Yid. An Eved Kanani can be purchased by a Yid from a Goy. An Eved Kanani can be purchased by a Goy who sold himself. Right? He wants to become an Eved. He needs money. Just like an Eved Ivri. So the Mishnah says, how do you acquire an Eved Kanani? We already discussed an Eved Ivri, how you acquire an Eved Ivri. How do you acquire an Eved Kanani? Eved Kanani, nikne big kesef with money. Bishtar with a contract with chazaka. Chazaka means you make him work for you. The coin as atzmai, how does Kanani go free? Bekesef through money, but according to Rameir, al yedei achedim. An Eved does not have money of his own. How can he redeem himself? It's somebody else who has money, and in fact, if that somebody else gives money to the Eved, even if they say on the condition your master has no control over the money, it doesn't work. Everything that kol mashe kona Eved kona rabbi yad Eved ke yad rabbi, whatever. So he has no money, so it must be somebody else. The Mepharshim have a hard time understanding, and I don't think I have a really good answer. How is an Eved Kanani bought with money? There's three kinds of Eved Kanani, I just told you. For he had a Yiddish master sold him, a Goyish master, but he sold himself. If he sold himself, how can he sell himself for money? The moment he gets the money, it belongs back to the master. So he got nothing. So if he got nothing, how is he koina? And if you can tell me that the money does belong to him, because this is an exception, then why need Kesef Adei Chedim? He has money of his own. The money that you gave him when you purchased him. And he can use that money to purchase it off the back. He puts it in a bank account, a long-term deposit, and then whenever he's ready to go out, he'll use that money. What does it mean?
Yeah, debt. He paid off his debt.
Could be, but it could be also that he has money. You're saying it. The mayor is saying there's no way in the world ever that an ever can use his own money. He has no money. Yes, he does. Unless, not that I saw anybody answering it. There's a Rashba that we're going to talk about maybe tomorrow, where the Rashba has explained when we say Yad Eved Kid Yad Rabbi, there's two ways of understanding it. One way of understanding it is that the Eved has no hand. Has no hand at all. His hand is the rabbi, is the master's hand. So no, it's not the pshat is the money goes to the Eved and from the Eved moves on to the master. There is no Eved here. It's only master. The other way of learning pshat, no. Yad Eved, there is a hand to the Eved. But that's after the Eved is kind, it gets taken out from the Eved and goes to the master. If you learn the second way, then the master can give him money for that instant. The Eved was kind, and then afterwards the master takes it from him. Maybe. But a star, when the master gives him a bill of divorce, that goes directly to the Eved, and nobody else can take it on his behalf. And we'll discuss also if Rameir holds that it's bad for an Eved to be set free. Rameir holds it's bad for an Eved to be set free. It's choivuloi because he loses the rights to eat truma, he loses the ability to have a shivcha kananis, so it's bad for him. So others can't take it on his behalf. We'll see anyway. No, say money he has his own. People can give him money on the condition the master doesn't have it. So his own. Others can give money on his behalf, maybe. Or but he cannot accept, only others can accept on his behalf. On the condition that the money should be from other people. Says the Gemara, first of all, how do you know that these are the methods? The Chsiva says you should pass them on to your children like an asset, like an estate. We compare it to property. How do you acquire property through money? Chazaka means you build a fence or something, repair the fence. The property goes back to the owners in Yabel, so whatever Kanani goes free, Yabel, no such thing. It says, that's a bit difficult to understand because before we said by an evidently, if he said I want to remain on, we passes there and he says he stays ad oilam, we say he goes free Yabel. Here we have the same word, and we say it forevermore. Trace answers. Because we already compared an Eved Kanani to property, and we know that property goes back in Yavul. What do you need a special pasuk Le'em Tavodu? It's the same thing as property. So because the Torah said Le'em Tavodu, we didn't need to. It's trying to tell you it's different than property. Property goes out in Yavul. This is La'olam. Take it literally. La'olam Em Tavodu. Taught we learned Av B'Chalipin. An Eved goes out also B'Chalipin. The Tana Didan, so how come our mission doesn't mention that? The Braisa mentions Chalipin, another way of acquiring, you exchange for this piece of material. Amashmul or Geshu, the Tana Didan, our Tana, the Milsa, the lesser metallic Tani, things which are unique to property. He mentions Milsa, the metallic, like Chalipin, you can buy metallic as well as Karka, like Tana doesn't mention it. Amashmul, Eved Knani, Niklam and Mashiach. An Eved Knani can be acquired through Mashiach, which is generally portable items. You give it a drag, you pull it in. You cannot do it in a public place, but in a side place and simply in other places, Mashiach is kind of. Cases, how's it work? Talk for best, give him a schlep, a yank, and you bring him over to you. Kada you kind of. But kada basla by an animal, we know that if you call that animal, the animal moves because of you. Machleki moves how much it has to move, but if it moves because of you, you're kind of. But not when it comes to Nevid. Like kind. Someone wants to know what's the difference. Bishleim. So first of all, Bishleim Tana Didan, our Tana the Mishnah, Milsa the Isa Metal like Tani. Why doesn't our Tana mention Mashiach? Because it's not something unique to property. But the lesser Taltik Tani, only thing unique to property. El Tana Bra, the Tana the Rice who mentioned Chalipin, which means Metalkin things. Oh, can you mention no Nish the Mashiach? Why doesn't he include Mashiach as well? Said the Gemara, Kiktani Milsa the Isa be Mekaka Metalti. He only mentioned the Bryce mentions things that are applicable to Karka and Metaltin, which is Keser, Star Chazaka, and Chalipin. Or the Mashiach, the Metalk, Isa Mekaka, less like Tani. Mashiach does not exist by Karka. The Mefarshim want to know, according to, and they don't really have a good answer either. According to Shmuel said Mashiach is Kaina. How can Mashiach be Kaina? We just said we compare Avodim to Karka. And we'll look about Bakam if you basically they would compare about to Karka. So and Karka is not Kinyan Mashiach. How can Mashiach work by Avodim? So the Pnei Yeshua says an interesting thing. He says, how do you know Mashiach is work by Karka? You know why Mashiach is work by Karka? There's no passage that says it doesn't work. It's just physically impossible. How do you move land? But in Evid, since physically it's possible, therefore it's Kaina. And everyone in the Sivs, everyone asks in the Pnei Yeshua, we have there's a potted plant. It's called an otzitz naku with a puncture. So halachically has a status of karka. We learned by Truman and all these other things, and yet you cannot be kain mashiach. Well, it's physically possible to move it around, but that you can really answer. They should say once karka on a whole, there's no mashiach, so decided that we're not going to have mashiach there either, because the mashiach actually the kinder rabbanon. Anyway, Ketzad, what did you say? How do you do mashiach? Talk for you, boy. That's like kadr. You drag, yank the ever you're kind of. If you just call him, not kind of. The Karda law, you call him not kind of. By the time you learn case him to see the achza by an animal, you grab a hold of it by its hoof, beside it here, but like if it's or on the saddle, b'shaliv shola, or things on the head, the prush or the muzzle in the mouth, or the bell around the neck. Kind of. One of the things you just call it and it comes forward. Ketzad b'mashicha. Sorry, what's mashicha? That's masira. Masira is when you pass the reins, you pass something to the other person. Ketzad is a machlek, you have to physically pass it on, or you just tell them take it. Ketzad we'll see later in traces. Ketzad b'mashicha. What's mashicha? Koyda lavi, but summon it, it comes forward. Or you hit it with a stick, but also front of and runs as a result of that. So moves the hand, the foreleg, and so on. You're kind of not enough to move the forelegs. The entire animal has to move its length. Okay. So but why ever you're telling me you can't just summon it? Amri behema died to the moras. A behema is going and moving because you told him to. Ever is a human being, and therefore, if he moves, he decided to move, and therefore you don't show ownership here. The whole idea of a kinyan is to show ownership. That doesn't demonstrate ownership. Rashi, ever cut him, ever has no mind. Always act like a baby. You call him and he come forward. That means he's ready to serve you. That's what we learned. Kate said the chazaka. The Mishnah says one of the methods chazaka. How does it work? He undoes your shoe. Or he carries your things behind you into the bathhouse. So these are acts of servitude that shows that you're the boss. He undresses you. He bathes you. He goes ahead and he smears you. Gorda, he scrapes your skin over there. He'll bisha, he dresses you. He puts on your shoes. Or he biyah, if he lifts you up, so he is working for you. Kind of, you're kind of. Interesting. There's the Mefarshim have a discussion, which I never really understood. I have a discussion. If you make a neder that I will dress you or I'll buy your clothes, do I have to also buy a pair of shoes? And they bring a rai from here and from other places where the Gemara separates Hilbisha and Inila as if it's two separate categories. If I say I will clothe you is not shoes, and if I am and shoes are not clothes. I never understood why I have to bring a rai from this kind of Gemara, which is the brachas. Yeah, exactly. She also got Turkey, make a bracha for shoes and a malbas harumim, which is for clothes. But anyway, this is the rai they bring. Amar Rav Shimon says, "Loi tehei chazak l'tei magba." Chazak is no better than hagba. Shagba koinu chamakim. Very cryptic statement. What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about over here an act of servitude, chazaka. What are you talking about? Kinyan hagba, which is to lift. Machlek is Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam and Ksubis Lavam Aleph. When you do hagba, how much do you have to lift? One tefach, or like Rani Tam, or 3 tefach. My comma. That's why some people have a minute by Kiddush, you lift the becher from the table 3 tvachim, so that's completely removed from wherever it was. It's called lifting. Rashi says, he be a, this is what's going on here. He be a hula rabbi, right? The Tanakama said if this Evid, this person, potential Evid, lifts the master, that's an act of servitude. So that's a chazak in your kind. What about he be a rabbi loy? If the master lifts him, loy kanu, you're not kind of. Why not if the master lifts him? That's a kinyan agba. In fact, the Mephoshah tried to understand, according to Shmuel says that Mashiach is kind. In other words, any kinyan that works by metal is kind. So why Taka does not agba kind? The master lifts the Evid. Why isn't that a kinyan? So somebody said, I can't remember who. He says a brilliant word. He says the whole idea of avdus is to show servitude. If the master lifts the Eved, it seems that the master is the servant of the Eved. It defeats the whole purpose. This is king. It's not like Mashiach when you're on the kinyan would, you don't see who's serving who by, be pulling you. But if I lift you up, then who's servant? So the Gemara hash to Damli Bihu Rabbi Kona. Well, it's the question. Now that you tell me you lift your master, you are koine. According to this, Shivcha Kananis. Tikna but bia, according to this, a shivcha knanis, if you have bia with a shivcha, she should be kinda. You should be kind to her. How? Why? So Rashi says an interesting thing. Because you're lying on top. It's as if she lifted you. You're saying that if an Evid lifts the master, you're kinda. If you're lying on top, you should be kinda. Other than trying to say it's not because of Kinyan Hagbah, that's how Rashi learns, not Kinyan Hagbah, but rather they say that what is it? It's you're using her. She's serving you. So that's and the machlek is if you need Hagbah, 1 tefach, 3 tvach. If you need Hagbah 1 tefach, okay, every woman lifts your tefach. If you need 3 tvach, what happens? She's not that big, and she's less than 3 tvachim. So what's the most question? More making a universal question for everybody. So therefore they say it's not talking about Hagbah, it's talking about she's serving you. Anyway, says the Gemara, Kika Amrinan, when do we say that it works? When do we say that it works? If it's sort of an avdus here, the master is having benefit, and the servant is having sa'ar from it. Over here, over here, they're both having pleasure, so therefore there's no avdus here. So Gemara, so let's make it. Let's say like kedarka. No, not conventional way. Who says that that she's not having any hana? And it's obviously it's a bit difficult to understand because every time the Gemara we want to say about people who let's say rape or whatever it is, we always say, but it's not conventional. That it's different. That maybe you continue going again because there's no hana there whatsoever, unless we say. Over here, she's a willing participant, maybe. If she's a willing participant, then she has a no. If she's not a willing participant, then it's not a no. Anyway, they're both equal. So therefore, the Gemara doesn't really answer the question. So the Gemara is saying it's hard. The Gemara is saying there's no avdus, whichever way, conventional, non-conventional, there's no avdus here, and therefore it doesn't work. It has to be some kind of sign of avdus here. Says the Gemara. So this in a way fits more into learning the Pshat is talking about that's chazaka you're using her. If it's just kinyan hagbah is a kinyan like a kinyan, nothing to do with showing avdus. Anyway, so going further, tell them more a story. Rabbi Yehuda Hindua is a big machlekes of shaynim. If Hindua is Ethiopians, or Hindua is Hindus, which are Indians. And some say that, Mahoidu Kush in the Megillah, Kush is not like we normally translate Ethiopia with a dark, but Kush are the Kushian mountains, which is Afghanistan, and which is near India, in fact. And that's why we had a machlekes in the Gemara Megillah, whether Haidu Kush are two extremities, too far, far apart, or Haidu Kush are next to each other. And just like Achashverosh controlled Haidu Kush, you control the whole world. No, they're arguing actually if Kush refers to the end, in civilized Africa in those days. Kush is right next to India there. And Rabbi Yehuda Hindu, gay, he had no children of his own. Cholash, but he was quite wealthy. He was sick. Oh, Mazutra went to visit him. Chazi saw the talk of Alma. He saw that he was on the threshold of dying. So Mazutra wanted to make sure that he acquires a slave. Now we learned before that a slave, especially if he's a godel, an adult, as soon as his master dies and there's no Yarshim, He is his own Irish. When it comes to Ketani, we had a machlek is Abba Shol, as we'll see in a minute, and the Chamim. When it comes to Gdol, so Mazutra wanted to acquire him, so he made a kinyan in him, but he told him, work for me before the guy died. So therefore he got him first. Shalovli Misani, take off my shoes, I'm tin base, bring it to my house. Bring it to my house. And this way he got him first. Before I should try to understand what is help. At the time when he told him, the guy wasn't dead yet, so the kinyan meant nothing. So no, the saying is, because that's why he told him bring it to my house. So it took time. By the time he got to the house, the guy died. And while he was carrying, the Evid wasn't thinking about being kind to himself, or maybe he wasn't aware that the guy died, and Mazut was standing there waiting, and therefore Mazut was able to be kind to him. Others say he told him go to my house because it wasn't Kinyan Chazak, it was actually Kinyan Chatzah. So he entered the house, it was kind of Kinyan Chatzah. This guy was an adult, and therefore I wanted to get in there before him. That this Yehuda Hindu passed away, and Mazut, who was alive, we got to own acquired this evidence. It was a child, and the Tanakama holds that a child also can acquire himself. You don't have to be bendas, and therefore he, even young, he decided to get the guy first. Like Abishol, not like Abishol said that a youngster does not acquire his own freedom. Therefore, there's no need to do this. The Tanakh Geshemesh, a busy son of Chasav and Eden came and plundered all of his assets. The service they old and younger. They all free. The avodim are free. Abishol says, only the adults. So, and we're talking about a Kotneh, and why did Mazut do what he did? Because he wanted to get ownership before the guy was able to get his own freedom. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.